Just as, and you find hope and resilience in these, okay? That's you. Here we go. So I want you just to think about these two questions to start with. What does resilience look like? And I want you to think of it for yourself. I want to think of maybe your family, your community, and also for children, young people today. What does it look like? In our current climate and the environment that we're facing today, what does it look like? What does hope look like? What would it feel like? And I want you to think of two people, maybe one that you know today who's really resilient, and you're going, wow, what is it they're doing? What is it? How are they getting through this? How are they surviving? What is it they're doing that actually shares that sense of hope? What does that look like? And then I want you to think of a person who's struggling, a person who maybe isn't resilient, a person who's that sense of hopelessness, the feeling of sadness, the feeling of, I can't get through this. Think of those two people today and maybe notice what's different. What is it about those two people? What's the strengths? What's the vulnerability? What do we notice? Because when we start to notice, that's when we can start to do things. We can start to actually draw from people who have strengths because they can help us through, but we can also then share those strengths with others. That's what compassion and care is about. It's not about, I've got it. It's about, I've got it. How can I help you? And if we can start from that place, then we start from a place of sharing with care and compassion for each other. So just for a moment, just to pause and stop and just notice resilience, notice hope. Because I think this picture really depicts something so powerful in our world today. The need to connect, the need to see, the need to notice. The need is to show that care and compassion. And I think this picture paints 1,000 words when we talk about care and compassion. In our schools, what are our children saying? They're saying, I'm scared too. As teachers, as adults, we're scared. So are our children scared. What does that look like? How would you know? The very words that she says, I am scared, is a place of courage for our young people. The need to have empathy with each other. I'm in pain, so am I, so am you. Let's connect together and build that strength. I think this one really depicts something so powerful, the rainbow, which is a powerful symbol of hope for us all. And we had it in every window. And it was our children that produced so many of those pictures. And it's something we need to kind of bring with us as we go on this journey of hope for them. If I was with you today and I was delivering the Hopeful Minds program in your school and I was getting you to become a hope ambassador, I would give you a great big tub of Play-Doh and I would say to you, go and make, go and create. And each and every one of you would create something different. And it's a lovely exercise to do maybe when you are at Christmas, just get that wee box of Play-Doh and just as a family, just invite them to create and have great conversations. Because that's where our story begins. It's not what happens to you, but what you make out of what happens to you that makes us resilient. It's the story that we tell ourselves. It's where that story came from, and we'll look a little bit about that in a moment. But ask yourself today, what's your story? And then visit some of your children and ask them what their stories are. We know through this pandemic, the prevalence of domestic violence has gone rocketed high. We know children are hungry. We know children are scared. We know children are vulnerable, but we also know parents are vulnerable. They're scared too. As teachers in school, we're scared as well. So how do we turn? And how do we turn this into something that we can grow and come from a growth mindset as opposed to accepting and understanding our vulnerability. But the reality is COVID-19 is defined as a trauma. And we can put it in any words we want to, but the very definition of trauma is the response to any event that encounters an out of control, frightening experience. So if you think of our world today, it's out of control and it's frightening. It's scary. You just have to turn on the news. I worked with a therapist during the weekend. She was telling me of a little boy who was 8 years old, had no problems at school, was doing so well, and was so good that his teachers thought he was one of those lovable children. He started to behave in a very strange way, where he would hit mommy in the mornings. He would bite mommy in the mornings. And it got to the stage that mommy couldn't get her little boy to school. And in the end, the teachers had tried everything to coax him into school, but mom was scared because she says, what happens if he bites some other child in school? Or what happens if he hits a teacher? Maybe it's better off I keep him at home for the while. But the behavior would kind of settle down then. And as soon as she would mention going back to school or going anywhere, the behavior would escalate again. And when we looked at the case and looked at the scene, we said, well, what's happening here? What's the story? And when we unfolded his little story, his story had begun by watching the image of the COVID virus on TV. Do you know the big, huge screen that we see? That big, big thing that appears on the TV behind every interviewer. He believed that if he left mommy, that the COVID would come and get his mommy. So his behavior was not to hurt and hate, but was to protect his mommy. So by behaving in this way, his mommy would keep him at home and he would stay at home from school. And all he was doing was trying to protect his mommy. So we need to understand our children will behave in many different ways. And it's not always bad. We need to know what the story is. So the same story or the same storm that we're all in, but we're all in different boats. What boat have you been in? You know, just think about your journey for the last 7 months. What's it been like? As a teacher, maybe as a parent, maybe a grandparent, maybe a dad, a mom, an aunt, whatever roles you play outside the role of being a teacher. What has that boat been like for you? And then take a look at what the boat has been like for our children. That's the place that we start to understand trauma. This is what happens to us. And I'm not going to read them all out because I think when you just capture so much. Because when we experience trauma or stress or that prolonged emotional pain, it hurts. And the more hurt we experience, the more the sense of hopelessness, and then the sense of helplessness. And we do know the two main predictors of suicide is the sense of hopelessness and the sense of helplessness. I can't do anything about it. I don't know what to do. And the pain is hurting too much. So if we can understand what's happening to us, and many of us can manage these big, heavy emotions because we maybe are able to connect to others, maybe with good support, maybe with somebody to talk to, or maybe we've learned good coping strategies. But sadly, not everybody is able to understand and absorb all the learning. So we have to role model to help them, to enable them to manage these big emotions. Resilience then, what is it? When I ask what is resilience, people have all different definitions. There's no right or wrong. You know, resilience is usually the ability to adapt. And I think this picture depicts what resilience is, the ability to adapt to situations. Some people say to me it's the ability to bounce back. I often say our children sometimes don't have a place to bounce back to. They need to bounce up. So the only way our children can really embrace resilience is by watching others around them. So how do you show resilience to your children? How do you share that with them? How do they learn from you? Because if we look at resilience in the bigger context, and I think Elaine alluded to some of this earlier, if we were to look at our education system at the moment and ask if we had a resilience indicator, what would it look like? you know, we could get better at actually introducing resilience into all subjects. It could be part of our journey, even our own personal development. You know, what am I learning? What have I learned? When I get things wrong, what do I learn about myself? Problem solving, they're skills for life. Our children have many of them already because they're figuring out this world, and some of them are figuring out better than us as adults are. Social skills, the ability to connect to others. We know that many people who are feeling sad, alone, really struggle with reaching out. We have a helpline number, and I remember in the school one day, the little boy, when I said to him, you know, we have a lifeline number. And he says, my mommy told me not to talk to strangers. And it was so interesting because I thought, you know, he was right. We should have visible people that we can reach out to. But the lifeline is there, and it is so important as well. But we need to be more accessible to each other to be able to say, I'm not okay today. I started on a journey of hope and hopelessness when I became ill myself. And after a number of years of working and never been ill, I always say when you become ill, you actually find your own vulnerability. And you actually find that, you know, there's something to hold on to here. And I always remember being off and people sending me loads of texts, I hope. And I'm sure if I asked you today, what does hope mean to you? You would have all sorts of, and none of them are wrong. They're all right. They're your perception of it. Some will have a spiritual meaning. Some will have a logic meaning. Some will have a scientific meaning. They're all right. Nobody's wrong. But hope is something we can hold on to. And when I started the journey, I thought, wow, could we teach this? And I remember Googling it and finding IFRED, which is the International Federation for Research into Depression in Children and Young People. And they were just emerging on the journey. And I asked, could we try this out here in Ireland? And it was so lovely because Catherine at the time said, take the lesson plans and just go grow hope in Ireland. And that's what we've been doing ever since. We're a voluntary organisation to teach hope. We go into schools, and what we try to do is to leave something behind. Because what all needs is for you to be trained as a facilitator. And then you grow hope in your school. You take charge of it. You grow it yourself. We've also now the Hope Ambassador, because what we found was when we teach hope to our children, we teach them lovely logic things around problem solving, but it needs to be transferred into the home. So now we have Hope Ambassador, where we train parents, caregivers, and anybody that wants to know and learn about hope, become Hope Ambassador. So you learn the new language. And we'll look at that in a moment. But this is what hope is, that the future, you know, is better than the present, along with the belief that you have the power to make it so. And if you look down the bottom there, it's based on goal-directed thinking. And goal-directed thinking isn't about getting GCSEs and A-levels and university. Goals are the intrinsic stuff that I bring out. What am I going to do if I become this? What's it going to mean to my world around me? And if we can start getting young people to connect to not just goals that I'm achieving this for a certificate, but a goal that I'm going to make it different. If you have young people today that are looking at science and you're saying, wow, you know, you could be the next person that if we ever get a pandemic again, and we may, you could be the front line of leading on this. Let's see that vision. Let's look at it, because pathways then is how am I going to get there? And agency thinking is, what strengths do I have inside? Also, what strengths do others bring to me, my teacher? We had a little boy who wanted to play for Man United. And I love the wee fella because he's an amazing wee fella. His teacher would have called him the lovable rogue. The wee boy that, you know, was going, he comes, he presents, he doesn't take much in, but he's here. And when we were going through the Hope for Minds with him, he talked about playing for Man United. And I says to him, tell me, when you play for Man United, how are they going to know that you exist? And he says, I don't know. I says, that's interesting. Because I says, you know, really you'd have to start looking to go places where they maybe kind of scout you and find you. So I said, do you do PE at school? Why would you do that? And I said, well, gosh, I thought if you were playing for football and you wanted to be good, you'd have to be fit. And he started to put the things in place and he was going, wow, how would I do that? So we got him to write a letter to his PE teacher. And we asked him, can you get me fit enough so that maybe one day I'll play for Man United? And his teacher was amazed with him. Now, we looked at pathways, how he was going to get there. And we looked at agency, because his agency was his PE teacher to start working on. The other thing we looked at was his maths, because we said, you know, I can imagine if you were playing for Man United and the referee says, I want you to go out so far, will you know how many meters to go out, or will you have to ask your mates? And he went, well, should I do maths? And I said, might be a good idea. Now, we were back in the school a couple of months afterwards. He's attending PE every day, and he even wears his PE kit under his uniform in case he forgets. He's starting to do maths. Now, he's not scoring A's and B's, but he's attending maths and he's learning. If we can start that mindset of putting a passion to a purpose to learning, then we start to enjoy what we're doing. Because the research says, and all the evidence is there, it's one of the programs that we were so privileged to have the University of Ulster on board with us to actually get the evidence to say, does this work? The research that we've done here in Northern Ireland has been presented at the Kennedy Foundation in the States and also the World Health Organization. And Dr. Byron is one of the renowned World Health Organization specialists in this. And he says, what you're doing in Northern Ireland, you all should be proud of. So any of you schools today that are involved in this, I want to say I'm proud of you too, because you're making a difference already. The sunflower is the international symbol, as we were talking about earlier. That's why you see sunflowers everywhere. The program is over 12 lessons. It can be taught an hour a week. You just come on the training, become a facilitator, and then you just grow hope in your school. And that's what we aim to do, to teach parents, educators with tools to actually grow hope. But before we do that, I think we have to just acknowledge that we cannot teach minds until we reach their hearts. At this moment in time, many of our children are hurting. So we can't just bombard them with all the new stuff and say, here's what it has to be done in a subtle, lovely way. And it all begins with relationships. And it begins with compassion. Are you compassionate to yourself as a human being today? Or are you going from a place, I'm not going to get this done? I listen to the media and I hear an awful lot on education. We'll try and catch up. We'll try and catch up. I think we have to stop using those words and start saying we'll try and recover, because recovery is coming from a place of compassion. Catch up means I have failed. So we have to change the language we're using for us. And if we do that in our schools, we're in a lovely place now to change the culture of our schools. Ask yourself, were you happy with the old way? What in the old way could we leave behind? And what for the new can we bring forward? But it has to start with compassion. And whatever program you bring into school, I'm not advocating this is the only one. And I know Aine will talk about her programs. You know, if we had a tumor today, we'd hit it with everything. With suicide, we have to hit it with everything. So I'm not competing. I want to create. And I want to create a menu that we are all together in this. And no program is better than any other program. Everything that we're doing is going to have an impact. But it all starts with relationships. And I put this up because I think it's the most powerful one. And if you look at, there's a guy called Dr. Bruce Perry, and I would ask you to kind of note it down and have a wee look at some of the stuff he's doing around relationships and young people. If you want to look at trauma and trauma informed in your schools, Dr. Perry is the guy that I would really kind of ask you to listen to, because he's amazing. But this is regulate, relate, and reason. It's a simple strategy if you're struggling today with building relationships, even with children or young people, but even if you're struggling with relationships with each other. Because often, has anybody ever calmed down, been told to calm down? Now, if I could see all your faces today, I'm sure you would have that grin. Have you ever done something and you're driving along and somebody in the car is beside you and you're getting so angry and you're irate and you're in this fight mood? Oh, he out of my way. Why did he do this? And somebody in your passenger seat says, calm down. Now you go from the fight flight, you actually go into the fight very quickly because you nearly counterattack. Our children are often at that fight, flight, or freeze. So to say to a young person, listen, calm down here, doesn't work. We need to regulate. We need to go to where they're at. And here is to regulate is to understand that they're in that fight. And all we need to do is acknowledge it. I can see you're angry. I can see you're sad. I can see you're hurting. That's all we need to do. And it's just go down to that level, noticing. Then we relate. Relate is the most important is, because how many times has somebody said to you, what's wrong with you? Straight away, I'm going back to, how dare you? But if I ask the person what's happening, I'm going from a place of compassion. And when I can get the place of compassion, it's only then can I reason and work out what's happening. I want you to learn. I can see that, you're struggling. I'm like, could I teach you a different way here? What could we do together? What would help? There's where we come from, a place of compassion. And there's where we come from, trauma awareness. We could just start the 3 hours today, we would make a difference in not only our workplace, because I think we could do this for our work with our colleagues at the moment, do it with our family. But we can do this even to start in schools and starting to become. But have a look. He has a lovely, great video on YouTube that really explains it in a lovely way to you. Because growing hope, and I put this out because I'll let you just reflect on it and maybe grab 1 or 2 things out of it. But the one that always strikes to me is we connect before we correct. Just connect with the young person, connect what's happening before you start correcting. Because remember, every behavior is telling us a story. Every behavior is communication. And if we dismiss the behavior, we actually create more vulnerability. But if we can enable a child or a young person to express, and I know a lot of lessons are done virtual at the moment. I'm working with a group of young people, 16 plus, who are struggling, and we meet on a Tuesday night for 1 hour on Zoom. And we asked them, well, what would you like? And last week they asked me one question. They just said, can we figure out who I am? So we spent a whole hour figuring out who I am. And what came out of it was so powerful in the contents of hope, because they acknowledged their story and they realized it's ever evolving. And some of their behaviors, it's not that they were bad people, they were hurting people. So when you start to kind of go from there, you recognize that when we hurt people hurt others. And it's not that they're bad, it's just they don't know what to do with it. So we need to be aware of that going forward. I just put this simple thing up and you can download it and stick it on your window, or, put it up on your notice board or just something, because we always say to people, are you okay? And we kind of run away. Have you ever kind of said to somebody, you okay? And you're just about to say something and they're gone. I would say when you ask the question, you have to give it the space to be answered. We kind of say, hey, here in this city, when I came to live here first, people used to say to me when I came to live here, what about you? And anybody from Area Strabane area will know, the West will know, what about you is kind of a language we use down here. And I used to think I was just about to say what was about me when they were gone. And I realized it was only a comment that people would make when they passed you by. They weren't expecting an answer. So here is a simple, just a very simple way of kind of starting to have conversations. Because remember, there's lots of great training out there on safe talk, there's connections, there's assist, there's mental health first aid. Start to look and see what will work in your school, because there is a whole great program of training out there. But the most important thing, if I'm concerned about somebody, I have to ask. And the most difficult question you'll ever ask somebody is, have you thoughts of suicide? That's the most difficult question you'll ever ask. I have always said I have been humbled and privileged to being able to ask that question. And anytime I've ever asked it, I've often got the sense of kind of relief. You've taken something out of my head that's been in there and you've acknowledged it. Because remember, by asking the question, you never ever kind of put that thought in there. The thought's already there. By asking it, you've helped to validate the pain the person is experiencing. I would rather lose a friendship than a friend. And I always say that to people, because sometimes we say, God, I couldn't ask that. What would happen if they don't speak to me anymore? But I would rather use the friendship than lose a friend. And I think we need to be aware of that. And remember, Lifeline is there. You don't have to take on the burden of trying to solve this problem for this person. Linking them to the Lifeline, saying, listen, here, phone that number. Let me know how you got on. You're offering hope to that person at that moment. listening with an open mind, encouraging the person to get the help. And again, if you go on mental health first aid or connections training or any of them, they will give you the practical tools. We can help save lives, and they are helping to save lives. And I think that's the important thing that we need to know, that just knowing how to deal with the situation helps us, but also helps our own self-care, that you know you've done the best you could at that time. Use words of possibilities. And when we teach Hopeful Minds, you learn a whole new language, because we're kind of stuck in a negative language, and a language of, what does it look like? We would use when instead of if. So when a young person says to me, if this ever passes, I go, when this difficulty will pass. Again, as I mentioned earlier, what's happening instead of what's wrong with you. When we come from a place of trauma, even understanding when we're saying to somebody what's happening, we're saying to them, I understand there's a story there. I understand that I want to listen to that story. And it's not about a right or wrong. This is a real story for you. They say healing begins when I tell my story and I'm listened to with care and compassion. And I know as teachers, I know you've listened to many stories, and you have began the healing journey for many young people, and you may not have thought at the time the power of just listening. The use of could instead of should. You should do this. How many times have you heard that? You should do that. You should get down to the gym there and get yourself fit. It's nearly like saying to somebody, you should do it. It's kind of mandatory. But when I'm saying the words of could, you could try this, you could try that. What I'm doing is I'm empowering instead of disempowering. So ask yourself today, as I go forward, anything I do, does it empower or disempower? Does it empower or disempower? When I empower somebody, I give them hope. When I disempower them, I deflate them. Even in ourselves, if I can give myself hope, then I can help others. And the lovely word yet. Do you ever use yet? I love it. I have a little 2-year-old granddaughter who climbed the whole way up in the worktop the other day, and I thought, oh my gosh. And I lifted her down and I says, can't do that yet. Hold on for another little while until I figure it out. The yet word is so powerful because it's not saying that you don't do it. It's saying, let's figure out a different way to do it. Let's weigh up some of the risks, and then we can work on it together. I want you just now for yourselves, because we've talked about our young people and what we need to do for our young people. I want to use the last little bit of time for yourself. I want you just to reflect yourself now on maybe what you've just heard, and just notice it. Just be curious about even how you're feeling. Just acknowledge what you are already doing. But sometimes we need to go within each day and find the inner strength so that the world will not blow out your candle. As a teacher, ask yourself, why did you become a teacher? Why are you doing the job that you do today? Why are you doing it? And think back to when you were at school. What do you remember? What influenced you to shape you to become that teacher? And it might have been that amazing teacher that just taught you that care and compassion and almost role modeled the person you are today. Because if I can go there and ask yourself, in 40 years or 30 years time, the children you're teaching today, and they become teachers, what will you want them remembering about you in school? What will you want them to know about you? I remember my English teacher because, I remember my maths teacher because care and compassion, you'll never remember what people said to you. You'll never remember what people do to you, but you'll never, ever, ever forget the feeling. And it's the feelings we need to embed in us as we grow hope and resilience for tomorrow. And it has to start with ourselves today. I want to stop and just let you read this. I think it's a powerful, and I think it'll kind of reflect where we're coming from. I think it really depicts, are we living in pieces? Or are we living in peace? And I love the way the two concepts of it, 6-inch ground, because what's happening in here is the most powerful thing of what goes on. And in our Hopeful Minds program, all we just teach children is about the brain. All we teach them is the upstairs, downstairs brain. And when you get kids starting to look at the upstairs, because remember, the frontal cortex is our logic part of the brain. It doesn't fully develop till we're 25. Sometimes they say today 28. So this frontal cortex isn't being developed. But what we can do is actually role model. So actually children can see what the upstairs brain looks like. And the best way they learn is often from their teachers or those significant adults in their lives, where they're coming from the upstairs brain. But if I'm the downstairs brain and the fight, flight, or freeze continuously, we need it. We need the downstairs brain because we need here. But if I am down here all the time, I'm exhausted. I can't learn, but I can't teach either. So I need to look at, how do I get myself in the upstairs brain? And that's all we teach in our Hopeful Minds. And it's enough for children to start being curious about how they respond and react to different things. Well-being for yourself. And the 5 ways to well-being is probably the most powerful evidence-based ever research that was done in context of well-being and emotional well-being for self. But I think we could do it for everybody if we have kind of, again, the core beliefs that these is the things that could help us. Connect is the first one where we talk about. But remember, we're not alone. Now, people have heard so much in the media over the last couple of months around loneliness. Loneliness has been here long before COVID. Many of our young people I worked with last year told me how lonely it was. So loneliness has been here for a long time. It's been escalated because of COVID and it's put a spotlight on it. But it's here. It's been here for a long time. So now we need to look at new innovative ways of connecting. And if it's through this, at least we have this, but we need to make this meaningful, that we can connect, that we actually create. And even, you know, in schools, that we can have something that gives children an opportunity to share, to connect with each other, can be so powerful. None of us have to be in here before. We have never experienced this before. This is something we've seen in films and movies, but we're living in the movie now. If people are scared, we need to encourage them to seek help. And that's the most important thing as a person that can help somebody else, is saying to them, help is there. Even having the Lifeline number on your phone and saying, having it on the end of your lesson plans so that children know that that's there for help. If they have school counselors, let them know it's there, because sometimes we wait until the crisis. When the crisis is there, we sometimes become blind to what's available to us. We need to be sowing seeds before people are in crisis. Be active. Now we're sitting on Zoom, and I'm sure some people at this stage, the diaphragm and kind of their breakfast are meeting here in the middle. So even just being physically active, you know, I would say put your phone away from your desktop so that you have to get up and move every so often. Put your glass of water down at the end of the table so you have to move. They say that your legs, your hips should be below, your knees should be below your hips if you're actually sitting correctly when you're doing a Zoom. But being physically active, even moving your toes and moving your feet, eat well, drink well, and water is so important. Take notice, you know, you're stronger than you think. And stop, breathe, and just think of, you know, what got me through today? Have that gratitude moment. What is getting me through? And encourage your kids to talk about it. Encourage your school to talk about what's getting them through. Keep learning. The more we learn about ourselves and the world around us, the better we will be. And to give. Give kindness, compassion, and care. And give that to yourself as well as giving it out to others, because we're great at giving it away. We're not so good at holding it for ourselves. Possibilities for our new world. As I said earlier, if you were to, I often give people amnesia. I say, if I hit you over the head this morning and you couldn't remember what school life was like before, what would you do differently? What would school look like? Our schools, and I talk to many teachers who experience burnout, who are exhausted, who suffer from compassion fatigue because they've cared so much, they're not able to care at the moment. So we need to now add an opportunity to actually say, what could we do differently? What would it look like? I want to see hope for minds. I want to see it on the curriculum, but I don't want to see it. I'm going to make it happen, because I'm not going to stop until it's there. And I'll keep on going, and I'll keep having conversations with everybody that I can have, because every child deserves the opportunity to learn about how their brain works. Because if we can teach them how the brain works, they can figure out an awful lot more when things go wrong. Schools for hope. You know, if you were to look at all your policies and procedures in schools, often our policies and procedures are kind of very policing. Are they coming from a compassionate place? You know, do we create schools that I can't wait to get there? Ask your children what they would like in their schools. I work with looked after children, and I remember talking to them about bullying. And they said to me, you know, we have a policy. And I said, really? I said, do you know what the policy is? Oh, no, it's in the filing cabinet. I said, we wouldn't see it unless we kind of had bullied or been bullied. I thought, that's not an active policy. What it needs to be is embraced, that everybody knows the policy, but everybody contributes to it. So how about getting our young people to start writing policies for our schools? Start and empower them. Give them opportunity to actually take school. In some places in the States, they invite senior students onto the interview panel to interview their teachers. At the end of the year, what they do is the teachers have to listen to evaluation from their students and how well they've done. It has actually created a great deal of compassion and learning, but it's also created a great deal of support. We're not doing it to them, we should be doing it with them, and that's education. Becoming trauma informed. I'm currently working on a piece of research with the University of Ulster. I know we've a lot of schools signed up to it that are becoming trauma informed. I'm really looking forward to the evaluation of it, because I think the more trauma informed we are, the more compassionate we will be. Because remember, hurt children can't learn. But if we can help soothe the hurt, then we can actually grow from this, where we go to a culture of compassion. And is your workplace compassion? Have you a workplace that's a compassionate workplace? Work-related stress is one of the major impacts on people. How do we do it? Many teachers I talk to say the job has got so lonely. I'm in a classroom all day, hardly get a chance to speak to anybody. What would that look like? How can we change that? Let's do it together, because going forward, I want to see recovery and post-traumatic growth instead of post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't want to see in 20 years' time that we're actually going through the same mental health pandemic that we've been going through. Let's break the cycle now, and let's make it a place that, you know, we can recover from this and we can grow strong. Because if we could just validate our emotions now, validate our feelings, accept them, work with them, go to that place of hope, we can come out of this, I think, far stronger human beings than we went into it. And in summing up, discover our true path. Because the meaning, you know, what's the meaning you take out of your life? That look like? Appreciate the life we have, not the one we want. That's where we start today, being grateful for what we have today. I have listened to so many people saying, oh God, what's Christmas going to be like? I go, what is Christmas going to be like? You're going to have to pick up the phone, maybe ring somebody we haven't rang before. Maybe we're going to connect a little bit better. Maybe we're going to be grateful that we're getting out of this year okay. We need to look at what we're grateful for. Remember, presents around the Christmas tree is more than just the presents, it's the presents. And that's what we need to get better at. Recognizing who we really are. And if I was to give you one message going away today, is to put a little note down, I am. What would you put after I am today? Most would say I'm a teacher, I'm a mom, I'm a dad. But there's a lovely one, Brené Brown always says, I am enough. And I think it's the most beautiful thing to finish today with. I am enough. You are enough. You are doing the best you can with your knowledge and skills and experiences. I want you to embrace that today on self-acceptance. And then let's begin a journey, a new journey of hope. And we can do this together, because we have a battle to win with depression, mental health problems. That's been, the pandemic has been here for a long time, but COVID kind of took over. But the pandemic around our mental health, 1 in 4 are still experiencing it. Suicide rates are far too high. We're losing too many beautiful souls to suicide. Together, we can make a difference. And let's start by just taking care of ourselves today, so enable us to take care of others. Let's make the most out of the best. And you can see that last little quote down at the bottom. I'm going to just stop sharing, okay, and just say, I hope that's been of some help, just a little bit of self-reflection. And thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.
Mary, that was fantastic. It was such a powerful presentation, that message about hope and resilience, and you've given us all a massive amount of useful cues to use, I believe. I mean, it's not rocket science, but when you put it across, it's just unbelievable. I mean, as a group, let's have a virtual clap, because that was seriously, that was unbelievable, Marie. Okay, love you for it, and that's brilliant. Now I've got a couple of questions, if we can sort of fire through them, Mary.
No problem.
So one of the things that came through from a couple of people were that they wanted to know if they could share the deck, and my understanding is there's going to be a follow-up email. We're going to share the decks today. And we're going to also have some links to training and people that can help to reach out to. But for you,
I have put it at the last slide, a whole range of kind of support services that are available as well. The other thing is, I didn't mention, we have a lovely wee app. It's called Hip Hope Hooray. It's an app that you can download. It's going on Apple shortly, but it's the Hopeful Minds program that was done by our facilitators during lockdown. So it's a lovely amateur one. I love it for its simplicity. You can download it and you can go through the Hopeful Minds. As a teacher, you could do it with families, but you could do it as families yourselves. And all you do is register, and it's the 12 lessons that are there. There's over, I think, about 50 motivational videos, and there's lovely exercises that you can do. So that's free, available to start the journey of growing hope even in your families.
That's superb, Mary. I mean, one of the sort of common threads here is, can you tell us a wee bit more about Hopeful Minds course curriculum?
Yes.
How can this be brought into a school?
The way it's brought into school, up to pre-COVID, we would have gone in and we would have done a training for trainers, and a training for trainers is facilitator training. So we would train others. So we would take you through, we do it through experiential learning, where you become a 12-year-old for a morning session, which is lovely because we just take off all the hats and you become, and you learn about it. We take you through the lessons, then we allocate in pairs, because we try to, in schools, to have a couple of people that are trained, so there's support for each other. Because what the PHA have said, if you're delivering any training around mental health and well-being, it is recommended you do 2 facilitators. In the event a young person needs support, so they're not sitting that I have to go and deal with somebody. Most times it doesn't happen. On an odd occasion, you may find a young person, particularly if a person's experiencing trauma. So we recommend 2, couple of people trained as it, and then what happens is you get all the lesson plans and you just grow hope in your school. Some schools have delivered it over an hour and a half. Some schools have delivered it, oh, that's the other phone board. Some schools have delivered it over 2-hour sessions. You work around your curriculum. But I would say to you, don't just try and fit it in, create a space for it. Drumrad College ran it. They took all their group, the years 1 and 2 through it, the year before last. At the end of it, every young person gets a certificate and they graduate, because we have the gowns and everything, that they go through a graduation process. And the evaluation, I can send people the research and the evidence if you want to build a case for it.
Absolutely fantastic. One of the sort of questions is this for key stage only?
No, we have delivered it in primary. We've delivered it in primary school. We went in and we delivered in P5, P6, P7, and then we delivered it in year 1 and 2 in secondary school. It was interesting. The biggest impact that we found was P7 in shifting the mindset. And we have actually measured it. We've used tools like emotional regulation, we've used self-esteem, and we've used kind of the whole hopelessness scale. There's very strong validated tools that we've measured it with. And we found the biggest shift was that P6 and P7.
Head of pastoral care at St Benedict's College. If you could give me a little call back. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. That's okay. That's all right. So we
That's
have
okay.
tools that we've measured it with. But what we have found is that the one thing came out of it, and the young people, when we re-evaluated after a year, it says, I wish my mommy would have known this and she might have helped me. So that's the reason why we've developed now. We've got moms and dads and grandparents and any caregivers to become a Hope Ambassador for your young person. So we take you on an amazing journey to become a Hope Ambassador. We're running it here across the city at the moment. We have, it usually runs an hour and a half for 6 weeks, and you become a Hope Ambassador at the end of it.
Okay, two aspects that sort of come to my mind is that you spoke about outside of school. You spoke about using groups outside of school. Is that something that you go and do?
We have done what I tried to do, because we're a very small group. What I'm trying to do is build capacity. So I would kind of look to youth workers to be trained in the Hopeful Minds. So it can be done outside school. Everything doesn't always have to be done in school. The other thing what we've looked at is to get really good parents. We have one mom who's become a master trainer, and she now delivers the program. She's delivered it in a couple of schools up in Oma. And the lovely thing, and Mandy's story is she lost her daughter, and she's doing it now in memory of her daughter, Ellie. She's an amazing trainer, and she started out on her journey and she says, I'm only a mom. And I went, wow, you're only a mom. I said, I want you to think of what you've just said to me. And now she is a master trainer, and she's setting up the first Hope Hub in Oma. So, and it's all done voluntary. It's people just making a difference and wanting to make a difference. So I would see this outside school as well as in school.
All right, here's probably my IT hat coming on. But, if you go into a primary school environment, what's the follow through for the next stage? You can't sort of train them up, give them a hope, and then let them loose in a sort of secondary school environment, and they don't have that same support. So how do you see that working?
What we're seeing is that the schools are continuing to deliver it in the secondary schools. So, and it was interesting when we done the research, some of the young people had it in P6, and they had it then in the first year in secondary school. And we thought, God, is there a bit of kind of repetition here? But it was actually delivered at age and stage, because the program, when you're delivering it, you're showing kind of videos that's age appropriate. You're adapting over the tools to that age. And the same concept of teaching children around upstairs, downstairs brain. The biggest ones that we teach is dealing with failure, because our kids today really struggle with failure, and we have to celebrate failure. So how do you teach that? And it's great when they're getting to the P6 and then they get a repeat and it can be adopted. It's not kind of something that's stick in stone. The other thing then is the school has to become a hope culture.
Of course, and you need that whole buy-in.
Yes.
To have somebody to drive it in the environment.
Yes.
And it starts to gather momentum, which is fantastic. Yeah. Unless there's any other questions.
Right, Bill, there is one. Somebody has asked, Mary, would it lose anything if you carried out the training via Zoom to the classroom, as we were all operating in protective bubbles?
Brilliant. Well, if you go into our Hopeful Minds app, we have 80 families that are running the program in their homes at the moment using the app. So, and what we've done is we've set you a challenge. So it actually will not, you're probably in context of kind of the face-to-face and the activities, but it can be delivered over Zoom. I have delivered it. And what we have found is many kids are quite comfortable with Zoom and technology today. It's also adults that are not very comfortable with it.
think we can all sort of agree. I know. Look, Mary, just to wrap us up, if that's the end of the questions, look, thank you very much. I mean, I think everybody would agree we could probably listen for a couple of hours to you and we would take so much more away. So thank you very much for today's presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll share the deck with everybody and sort of the links and things and the app name in an email. That's brilliant.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, again, Mary, I just can't thank you enough for that. It's amazing. Like every time I listen to you, I feel my own hope levels go up. I just love listening to you. And there's so much excellent feedback here. There was one last comment put in. I'm going to read it out from Mark. I know it has been mentioned, he says, but I have 25 17-year-old boys in my school trained in Safe Talk, and I would recommend this for others. I'm just reading that out because Safe Talk is available free.
Yes.
And avail of it if you can. And I think that's just amazing that you're training older children in the school. Sorry, Mary, were you going to speak?
Well done. Well done. There's innovation. Well done.
So thank you, everyone. We'll move on. Our second speaker this morning is Aine Wallace. Aine is a creative health practitioner. She's a writer. She's the curator of positive products in mental health resilience and trauma training. She's founding director of Fresh Minds Education, which I know is Fresh Little Minds. And it's a vibrant social enterprise in Northern Ireland's leading specialists in creative and therapeutic education, working in depth, sorry, I'm reading, with more than 6,000 people every year. They use innovation and creative approaches to develop emotional health, resilience, and prevent suicide, and focus on supporting parents and teachers to raise children strong. And they help everyone understand the complexities of mental health and empower people to find ways to take personal and organizational action that will build more resilient futures. So again, Aine's going to speak for about 45 minutes, and then Caroline Telford, another member of my team, will put your questions to her. So just keep typing into the chat as she speaks, please. Her talk is titled Transition from Trauma to Resilient Futures. Okay, Aine?
45 minutes. Hi, everyone. The only part of that introduction was the part where I get to say I'm also terrified. So I have my feet on the ground, as Mary says, below my waist height, and I'm grounding myself as we speak. So thank you, Mary, for that amazing introduction. You know, I love and adore your work very much, and have complete respect for everything that you do. And it was such a beautiful, heartfelt introduction to this vitally important work in this time in our history. But like I heard you say, we know that the need for this was here way long before the pandemic. And I think in my heart of hearts, I realize that the pandemic is maybe given us all permission to actually have more open conversations about the need for this. And it's maybe given us opportunities to be a bit more courageous and a wee bit more braver to do the thing that we know needs done now. Like we always knew, or our bodies always knew this was needed. We were just maybe a wee bit too scared, or we felt it needed to be left to experts. So I, like yourself, Mary, would see us all as experts. You know, nobody is more expert than the other. We all have a part to play, and it's an important part. So Fresh Minds Education, like our hope is to create, you know, hope for a calmer, kinder, healthier, well world for children and families. And we don't see people in the now. We don't see children. We don't just see children. We see whole families around children and whole communities around families. And we see the interconnectedness of all things. We see the interconnectedness of how our planet is with how we're feeling in our houses, in our homes. And we see the connections between how we are acting and behaving with how that affects the planet, and then how that affects mental health. So we're very aware of the interconnectedness of all things. And we try to, you know, you know, bring that quality or tone to our work. We have 4 main programs. So we've got Connections. So Connections, you would have heard Mary mention there, that's our suicide prevention program. And actually, unfortunately, right now in Northern Ireland, so I would be the trainer for the likes of Safe Talk in Northern Ireland. I would deliver, assist, but Connections is the program that we've written ourselves. And I'll talk to you a little bit about why we chose to develop our own curriculum over the last number of years specifically for Northern Ireland. But unfortunately now many of our programs are not available because they can't be delivered online. So there's no authority or authorization for them to be delivered online. So one of the things that we have done is we have developed Connections for online, and in 2 to 3 weeks time we will start launching that. So everybody here today, I mean, you're more than welcome to sign up for a place in those courses. They're available to people throughout Northern Ireland, and yeah, they are really important, and they're free. They're funded by the Public Health Agency. So, you know, there is hope, Mary. There is hope because, you know, I think that even this pandemic has even encouraged the likes of our public health agencies to kind of take a risk, you know, although it's all very evidence-based and it's very thoughtful, which is why it's taken months for it all to be pulled together. It's still frontier work. We aren't looking to anyone who's done it before because it's never been done before online, but actually there's a willingness now to take that risk and to take that step. So that's a program I'll tell you a bit more about as we go along. So we also run our Fresh Minds curriculum. So we have both Fresh Little Minds, which is targeted at primary school, and Fresh Young Minds, which is post-primary. And all of our work is based upon the AMBER approach. So the AMBER approach I'll teach you a little bit about in this session today, because I'd like you all to leave with something that you can actually embed in your skill right away. And it's a framework upon which all of our work comes from. We have positive products as well. So the pandemic, it forced us to also look at other ways of reaching people. So over the last number of months, we have been developing a wide range of positive products, and those have been going out to homes. Like, for example, we have our teen mental health boxes that have gone to over 1,000 teenagers who were in isolation over the pandemic. So let's just go on. So like, we're connected with a wide range of organizations. So you can see the Public Health Agency I've already mentioned through our suicide prevention, but we work with a lot with the Arts Council. We are really artists at heart, and we're like, my origins are in drama and youth work and artwork. So I get great joy of collaborating with artists. And I have to say that artists really respond brilliantly when working with children. So, you know, again, it's not what I'm here to talk about today, but I would really encourage everybody to reach out to the arts world and to involve them in your schools, involve them in your community work, and bring them in and build relationships with artists, and allow and empower artists and facilitators in like organizations like ourselves and Mary's organization to actually work without having to dictate every single outcome that you're expecting. Because when we work with children, and if we are tied to very, very, very tied down, nailed down outcomes, we are actually determining what the child's need is in advance, and we have to create the space for children and young people to, you know, to show us their needs, so that and support us to be able to work with children as their needs show in the here and the now, so that we can actually enter into work that is going to be more powerfully reparative for them. So, you know, I am very evidence-based and very outcome focused, and, you know, I can give everybody the theory and I can give everybody the rationale and the reasons, and we can set up very defined projects. But it's when we work with people more creatively and more openly that we actually have noticed a far, far greater impact. And it's going to take a brave new world of leaders to actually empower facilitators like ourselves, organizations like ourselves, arts workers, mental health workers, to actually work alongside of you and become part of the solution. We really want to. We just need, you know, your permission. We need your authority, and we need your trust. And we will work really hard to build that up with you, because we do believe that we are in this together, and we are not here to be experts in your world. We are here to support you thrive in your world. That's what we want for children and for young people. So, you know, our story, you know, or why we do what we do. So it kind of began with me. My background is in arts work and youth work. I'm a peace worker at heart. All I ever wanted to do when I was younger was bring about peace for Northern Ireland. And after 10 years working in peace work, youth work-based peace work, I lost young people, what I would say, on my watch to suicide. And I was really stuck and really lost. I was young myself. I was in my early 20s, and there was very little about, and I had so many questions, and I had parents coming to me and asking me of, you know, if anything that I may have seen and noticed, and I hadn't. And you know, so I very quickly began to realize that there will be no peace in our land. There will be no peace for our people unless we can empower people to find their peace and their contentment on the inside. Until we have it here, we can't have it there. So like, until individuals have peace in their heart, we are not going to stop bullying in our schools. You know, policies and procedures can potentially control behaviours, but it's not transformative in terms of transforming our hearts and minds and how we're going to show up in the world. So for me, that's the basis upon which everything comes from, is the desire to have peace for our people, to have peace in our land, and that it starts one person at a time, and that we all show up for ourselves, that we all have a whole lot of responsibility in bringing about within ourselves what we seek outside of ourselves. I didn't have the answers to suicide, and I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I'll do what I do best, is I'll go and I learn. So I started taking courses. I became a bit of a course junkie. I also became like a journal junkie, and this is back at the times whenever you had to actually write to universities to get their studies, and there was no email and major access to Google or anything like that. I don't think I knew what it was back then. But I remember getting studies back on psychology, on neuroscience, on attachment, and I began to realize that I needed to actually help teach the young people that I was working with what I was learning. And I may not have been an expert, but they needed to learn alongside of me. So we still have a few of my boards, that, you know, the big boards I would have created to teach them. And it's so funny because there's 2 or 3 of those boards that still go out to schools to this day, because it's as relevant now as it was 20 years ago. It's just really becoming recognized as essential now. Yeah, so like, I really wanted to know what's going on in our minds and bodies, and I wanted to help empower other people to do that. So I build practice-based approaches informed by research. So I am an avid like reader, an avid academic. However, I am a practitioner first. And so really what I have hopefully achieved on behalf of our organisation is we've taken a lot of that complicated stuff and we've just made it simple. We've said this is no good in these books. This is no good in the hands of academics. What we want to do is we want to actually take this, translate it and make it understandable so that children and parents and everybody can become empowered by what it is that we're learning, like from this amazing research that is coming through. I wanted to promote positive mental health, but my bigger goal was to break the cycle of hurt. So really, you know, the world around me was changing, and as I was delivering suicide prevention training, I realized that the training that was that we were offering to our communities and to our people whilst it was serving them, you know, when I started 5 years later, the content hadn't changed enough, but our population had changed. So I thought it's time for us to actually create something that's got a more local focus, so that we can actually support people, you know, that we can support people with local messages, that we can also offer an education that's more transformative, so that yes, we will increase people's knowledge. Yes, we will teach people about how to pick up on signs and how to intervene. But what I was interested in was breaking that cycle of hurt. And I realized that as an educational practitioner, that whilst I'm in the room with people that I am working with, I'm working with people wearing all of their hats, and I am there to support anything that shows up in that room. So really what we did is we started to look at what was behind suicide, what was under suicide, what are the vulnerabilities that can lead to somebody having thoughts of suicide. And so that forms a really big part of our training, because when we don't understand it, we can't change it. Also, when we do understand it, we can begin to be way more compassionate as a society and break down a lot of the stigma that there is around suicide. And I know that it's lessening year on year on year, the stigma, but it is still there in many elements of our society. I just felt that we could do more, and I thought that we could also contribute in at a preventative level. So whilst the suicide prevention training, you know, was meant that for a period of 10 years I was working in intervention and crises management, I felt that, you know, we can do more. We can work right back downstream, whereby resilience can be built to prevent people ending up with thoughts of suicide. So we've got the skills and we've got the services to support people should people be having thoughts of suicide. But what can we also do now to prevent people, or to prevent people traveling on that path of life, and to be able to better cope with the ups and downs of life. So I developed the AMBER approach, and the AMBER approach really is now the approach that underpins all of our work. And it's about, you know, really connection before correction, and it's about having that peace on the inside of me before I dare to ask you to have peace on the inside of you. So it's about, you know, really us, if we have our inner amber, if we have our inner amber approach going on for us in our lives, we can show up into the world that's going to be way more helpful for them. And really that's how Fresh Minds Education became about. Fresh Minds Education is now a company that takes the amber approach through its courses out into the world. So as I said, there's a theoretical base to all of our programs, but it's practice. So I think it's really important for me to also define with you how we define mental health. So as you can see along that axis there, you've got mental illness and no mental illness. And really, I guess what I'm saying is that mental illness in itself is a spectrum. So you could be here in this part of the spectrum where you are living with a diagnosed mental illness. And certainly, you know, I have at times in my life been on like this part of the spectrum. So you're living with a diagnosed mental illness, and down here you don't have any mental illness. You don't have a diagnosed mental illness. But mental illness is different from mental health. Sorry, I have gone on. Mental illness is different from mental health. So the long line up and down here is our spectrum of mental health. And we're saying that down here you have poor mental health, and up here you're flourishing. So down here is where perhaps you're thinking that, you know, I am a burden. What's the point? You don't understand what life is like for me. You're like, it's like chin up. Let's just get on with this. You know, things aren't feeling good. Things aren't feeling well. You're maybe saying things to yourself like, it's all my fault, I'm always screwing things up. So it's the language that we're using that are the telltale signs potentially that, you know, we are on this part of the spectrum. As we go up on to this part of the spectrum, it's like you're hearing things like, it's okay to not be okay. So I mightn't be great, I mightn't feel good, but it's actually okay. I'm okay with that. I can be with that here and now. I've made a lot of mistakes, but mistakes are normal. I don't give up easily. Like, I might not be getting this right, but I've got a bit of grit and determination here. I'm not going to give up. I feel safe. You know, I feel safe to be here how I am, regardless of what's going on for me. I make a difference. You know, so this is a person who believes that they can make a difference, is a person who has positive mental health, who has that self-efficacy, that positive outlook of their own selves. And then I have hope, as Mary has been talking about this morning. So a person who is flourishing is living with hope. And this is a Corey Keyes model. I've just put a few of my own words onto it here, but this model really helps me determine where I'm working. I'm not working along the spectrum of mental illness. I am supporting the spectrum of mental health. I'm supporting people from moving from anywhere in this part of the spectrum up towards flourishing, up towards having their positive mental health. Whether you have a mental illness doesn't matter to me, because mental illness doesn't determine your mental health. You could be living with no mental illness, but yet you could be really struggling with your mental health. Equally, you could be living with a mental illness, but because of the strategies that you have in place, the medication maybe that you're taking, the support that you have, the way that you take charge of your life, perhaps maybe you're flourishing. So it is possible to live with a mental illness and to flourish, and it's possible to have no mental illness and to be really struggling. So we like to say that in our work, we're working on the spectrum of mental health, not the spectrum of mental illness, because your mental illness, whilst it might make your mental health more vulnerable, it doesn't determine your mental health. There are other things that you're doing that are contributing to your mental health. So here we have the path of life. So we're saying lots of my original courses, the suicide prevention work, is all up around this part here. So it's all about, so the path of life is like the metaphor that we use. And we're saying that anybody could be anywhere on that path of life. And they may need like a crisis managed, or they may need they may be post-crisis and be in that recovery and healing stage. But that recovering and healing stage, you know, it isn't really long like this. It should really be a circular path, because that stage of recovery and healing is also happening downstream here. And here's like our early years. Here's where we can fortify mental health. Here's primary, here's post-primary. Here's where children are at when they're with you. And so in our courses, we talk about the impacts of things like alcohol and drugs and social media. We talk about how they can negatively impact mental health. We don't shy away from anything, any conversation when we're facilitating our courses. So I'm just going to pause here. So we acknowledge that there are times whenever we do fall on that path of life. And sometimes we can have one fall too many, and the load that we carry can become very, very overwhelming and exhausting. And our hurt bodies can struggle to find the strength to get back up again. Left untreated, emotional wounds can become infected, and immune systems become compromised, and they find it harder and harder to fight back. Yet the shame and stigma of being found out can drive us to wear a mask. So I'm going to show you a little video now created by a group of young people in Belfast who are ambassadors for our Connection Suicide Prevention Programme. And I'm just going to talk over it while the wee video plays. I know there's music in the background which you may not hear, but for those of you who hear it, you can just tune into that. So we try to cope and numb the pain to feel relief. We soothe in lots of common ways like work, exercise, food, box set binging, social media scrolling, shopping, speeding, taking risks, getting into trouble with the law. We take stimulants like energy drinks, sugar, alcohol or drugs. Some of us cope through avoidance, and we can gamble away all that's dear to us. And so, in a downward cycle we go, feeling sadder, lower, more depressed, more alone, more exhausted, more despair, and eventually we can feel worthless. We lose all sense of pleasure and joy, and as we disconnect from our hope and all that feeds and fuels us, we come to question the point of it all. All of this pretending shatters our memory, our concentration, and our confidence. The bubbly social person can shut down, or they can put on their mask and appear happier than ever. This is how we survive, and it is exhausting. We become irritable and difficult to be around, and we can lash out at those we love, just like this guy. Social media, financial stress, bullying, family relationship problems weaken even the strongest of arms. It's a heavy load to carry, and we never know what anyone is carrying at any given time. It can feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's a struggle to find hope. The pain can be unbearable. It's not easy. So a group of young people that are ambassadors of our Connections programme in Belfast through the Flare Youth Service team created that video, and feel like that's a really positive message that they want, not a positive message, it's a message that they want schools and parents and adults working with young people to hear, because they want adults to understand how complex it can be to be a young person in this day and age. And they want us to understand that they are carrying a lot in their arms, and that very often that it is invisible and very, very hard to see, that they can be hiding it very, very well. And when we really look at the problems that young people are experiencing, we have to look at not only their lived lives and their lived experience, but we have to look at the whole picture. And trauma can be impacting and showing up for a young person that isn't even of their time. It could be, as you can see here, ancestral trauma. It could be inherited trauma. It could be something that they've experienced through their lifetime. It could be something that's going on for them in their family. It could be something that's going on for them in their culture, in their community, social or digital setting. And it could be things that are going on politically, socially, or globally for us all, where Mari has talked so beautifully this morning about the COVID pandemic and the impact that that's having on us. But my son, who is 10, he would say to me, my goodness, Mummy, first of all, we had the fires, then we had a threatened war, then we had, and he's able to list a wide range of global political and social situations that he's aware of that affects how he feels or how safe he feels in the world right now. And in Northern Ireland, this is really important because we have a whole history of impact from way back to the famine, the conflict which has been going on for more than 100 years here, a history of poverty, and, over the last, since the 70s, our civil war. And in terms of suicide prevention, we're seeing a whole lot of that playing out now. We're seeing a whole lot of children of those times becoming one of, who are now the adults in one of the most vulnerable age brackets to mental health and to acting out on thoughts of suicide. And those are the parents of the children that are coming to school. And if you can imagine being a child, even growing up in a family whereby your adult person, your safe person, is impacted by a trauma that they don't even understand, that nobody has helped them acknowledge. And you ask the adult, what's wrong with you? And the adult doesn't know, because the adult thinks my life is fine. You ask the child, how are you? What's wrong with you? I don't know. And very often people don't know, because when we're working with trauma, we're often not just working with their lived experience, we're working with their historical experience. The body remembers the score. So trauma doesn't just live in our conscious narrative, trauma lives at an unconscious level within our bodies. And our bodies are trying to communicate with us all the time. And when we look at the trauma cycles, we're really saying that here we are going around in this cycle as a society. And, we have experienced all of these things, or we are experiencing all of these things, and it's impacting our story and our beliefs. And that story and belief system and the emotions and energy that come along with that is how we are showing up in the world. And in our programs and in other people's programs, and at this time in our world, people are beginning to Suicide is telling us that people can no longer cope. Suicide is telling us that people are unable to cope with their story or their belief or their experience, conscious or unconscious, that is living inside of them in relation to their experience of the world, and that they need help. When a person asks for help through a behaviour, they are saying, help me not recycle this round and round again because it's too unbearable for me. I have had enough. I am ready to be a transitional character. I am ready to heal, repair. I'm ready for change. But I need to do that. I need to rewrite my story. And to do that, I need help. To do that, I need you. And I need you to be with me as I become a transitional character, not just for myself, but for everybody that I will be meeting in my lifetime, for my children and for my grandchildren. The work is going to be hard. It might be a wee bit ugly. It might take me years of my life. But when I do this, I transform the trauma that's living inside of me. I transform it into something that's positive. I transform myself. And as a result, I don't pass this on. And I believe that now is the time for Northern Ireland to address trauma. So when we go out into our classrooms with our HOPE programs and with our Fresh Little Minds Resilience programs and Fresh Young Minds programs, we are going out as a facilitation team who's willing to sit beside children and adults as they transition trauma. We are there to be by your side, and we are there to sit with you as you do the hard work and the courageous work of showing up for your young people. So we do that through the AMBER approach. The AMBER approach, as I've mentioned earlier, has three main elements to it. There are, and the first and the most important element is connection. In the absence of connection, there can't be any resilience. So it all starts with connection. And connection enables, when I connect with you, or when you connect with a young person in your class, or when two adults connect with each other, what happens is that you form a bond that is heart to heart. It's from my heart to your heart. I am here with you now. And when my heart reaches your heart and your heart feels safe with me, what happens is that there's an entire reaction inside of our body that enables us to access the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain, our thinking brain, where we can rationalize, where we can hit the pause button, where we can make new choices. But for a lot of the time, whenever behavior shows up in a room or with a child in youth work or in schools or in families, we are triggered, so therefore we just want the behavior to change. So we go head to head and we say, stop that, don't do that, that's not okay. And what is happening is that the prefrontal cortex of the person we're speaking to isn't available to us because we haven't connected with their heart. We have to gain access to heart. We have to win hearts to gain access to minds. So our work is very much heart orientated and person-centered. We also teach strategies. So when we teach strategies, what we're doing is we're acknowledging that as a transitional character, it's really important that we learn how to be with ourselves in our pain. So it's not about, you know, a lot of people may come to us wanting us to find ways to calm their children. We're not actually that interested in calming children, because we think that maybe not all emotion needs calmed. Maybe it needs emoted in another way, in a way that's healthy for that child. So we teach children about the arousal systems, we teach adults about it as well, and we teach us to incrementally access a state whereby change becomes possible. So we teach strategies that helps us manage our states, the adults manage their states and children manage their states. And when our states are in the right, when we're in the right state, then we are able to be in the right place for learning. And finally, themes. We create the space for children to talk about what's life for them, what's presenting in the here and the now. We can also, of course, address larger things. For example, if children are going through bereavement or loss, we can, of course, address those. But very often we can be asked to come in to address a theme, maybe like bullying, but actually the conversation that needs to be had is, why do I hurt? And so that's the theme that we will go with a child. So our AMBER approach is based upon a large number of theories, as you can see, and we're not going to go through all of those, but putting AMBER most simply, it's anchor, move, breathe, express, and relax. And so anchoring is all about attuning, aligning, and connecting with care. So it's the connection part. It's a really important part. And there's two elements to anchoring. One is recognizing that people need people. So my brain, through my mirror neurons, is reading your brain through your mirror neurons when we're connected. So if you're stressed and there's a lot of things going on for you, you will not be fully present with me, and my brain will know that. So therefore my brain won't feel safe to be in this relationship with you. And the converse is that if my brain reads that you are present, that you are here, that you are calm, and that you are regulated, my brain will read that this is a safe space for me to be in right now. So we teach the neuroscience, we teach children about, and adults about how their brain works. So we teach them about, if your brain is your hand and your thumb is your emotional center of the brain, that it's normally tucked up in like this, and here's your brain stem. So heading down into your heart and into your body and taking all the information down into your body, which is supporting your body to feel the way that it's feeling. But this part of your brain is your emotional center. And so when that part feels big feelings or tricky feelings, so we don't call it good or bad feelings, we call it tricky feelings or feel good feelings. So when our brain feels tricky feelings, what happens is that your prefrontal cortex, this rational thinking part of the brain, it flips like this. So this part is no longer connected to this part. So this part is now in charge. So now we have tantrums, we have anger, we have frustration, we have withdrawal, we have survival. Because this part's thinking, if I don't behave in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, then what's going to happen is I'm going to be in severe danger here and I need to survive. So what we teach children then is how this all works, but we also teach them how to re-engage their prefrontal cortex. And the very act of teaching them how to re-engage their prefrontal cortex builds the neural pathways in the prefrontal cortex. So makes it more likely that they can do this for themselves over time. But we also teach them and the adults that there's two people in a relationship. Going back to that last picture, there were two brains. So when this little person's brain flips, there's another person in this, and here's the adult person, the parent, the teacher, the youth worker, whoever, and it's possible that when their brain flips, that their mirror, this person's mirror neurons have read that person's mirror neurons, I don't feel safe here, and now we have two flip brains, and we have two people without their prefrontal cortex engaged. And what we're saying to the adult is that this is natural and normal, and getting out of sync is normal and okay. But the important thing is that we get back into sync, that we ground and anchor ourselves, because this little person hasn't developed their prefrontal cortex yet. They haven't developed those neural pathways. So we need to be able to go over, we need to be able to hug their brain and help their bodies calm down. And by us doing that, their prefrontal cortex develops. And this is a reparative relationship. This is a safe relationship for children and young people. This is a safe relationship for adults. When our bodies feel feelings, regardless of the feeling, there is no good and bad feeling. It's just feedback. So when our bodies are feeling stuff, it's telling us, are we like this or are we like this? And I think Mary has talked about this already this morning, but a big quote that really drives us is that hurt people, yet healed people, heal people, and compassion is the pathway. So policies and procedures is something that we really care about a lot. And so we have our very own policies and procedures in Fresh Little Minds, and they're called the Golden Rules. So the Golden Rules are really important. And when we're working with schools, schools or youth groups, we would ask schools to comply with the Golden Rules. So I have screenshot this into 2 slides to make it easier for you to see. But the golden rules reminds us as the adults to take a breath before we start, to leave our worries at the door. And the golden rules also gives us the rationale for that, because when we do, children can sense that you're there for them. And when they do, it helps them feel special and safe. It doesn't matter what has happened before or what's going to happen after. For this time, we're going to focus on creating a positive, safe learning environment for children, and it starts with being available to them. We ask the adults to join in all of the activities, even if it feels cheesy, and it will feel cheesy, because when children see us taking part, they learn that it's okay to be silly, and it helps them to join in. And when a child can join in with our activities, we're now consciously and intentionally working with the parts of their body, including their brain, and their confidence can grow. They can access the education and their confidence can grow, and their bodies and minds can feel better. So we never ever ask a child to do anything that we won't do ourselves. So another golden rule is to help children join in, especially those who are struggling. So we never ask children to leave. So we don't exclude children from our groups or our classes. We just work harder to find ways to help them stay, to make it possible. We are okay with children floating around the edges of the room. We're okay with children who are not behaving in a way that you might want them to behave, because we recognize what might be happening for that child in the here and the now. We ask you to we ask us as the adults in the room to support each other through our words and actions, because children need to see us trusting each other and us behaving well with each other in order for them to feel safe. So they can't feel safe, they can't access any learning unless we show up in a particular way. So there's a lot of our golden rules here. Be kind to children, never shout at children, be gentle. And I know that seems obvious, but when we raise our voices, a child's brain gets freaked out. It causes a biochemical response inside of their body, which means that it doesn't matter what we do or say, they can't engage and they can't connect with us because they don't feel safe. So, we really are encouraging through our golden rules for, us as the adults to show up into the classroom in the best way possible. And I've got a copy of the golden rules just for everybody, who's here today. So we'll get that sent out to you. In terms of our movement then, the move step is all about unblocking or releasing stuck or excess energy. So energy can be stuck inside of us, or it can be excess, and it can be, hyper and, off the wall. And we're recognizing that energy is, so emotion is energy in motion. So when I see stuck energy or, wild energy, I'm recognizing that that's emotion expressing itself. And really, the theory that would underpin our move is the polyvagal theory. And we're saying, okay, so how can I work with the states that are in front of me to support that child to get into the right state for accessing what it is that we're doing? We've got our breath work. So breathe is all about somatic and intentional breath work. So lots of breath work methodologies that enable us to support children have a chemical messaging experience in their body that's positive for them and that produces chemicals that help them feel good in a natural way. The E is for express. So with the express, we're exploring, we're developing emotional literacy, so the ability to actually talk about how we're feeling. We recognize that we are integrated systems, and so when there is emotion in one system of our body, like our central nervous system perhaps gets knocked off sync because we are anxious or worried, that in fact is impacting on the other systems inside of our body. So that might be why we have to run to the toilet a lot. That might be why we're struggling with constipation. That might be why we're really having butterflies in our tummy and struggling to digest what it is that we're going through. So we teach them about the biology of their bodies, and we do this all through fun play, but they get this whether they're in primary or post-primary. And finally, the purpose of us showing up is because we're trying to restore homeostasis to those beautiful bodies and to restore health. And we're saying that we can't restore good health without bringing people into balance. So we need to go through the anchor, move, breathe, and express in order to achieve the relax. It's from this point that actually that health is possible. it's only when children and young people are in this state, that they've reached this state, that they can even receive the message or that you may want to relay to them. So if you're wanting them to hear your really important messages around mental health, we need to work hard to get their bodies prepared to hear those messages. It's not just a case of showing up and telling them stuff, because you haven't anchored with yourself or anchored with them. We haven't moved their energy or yours. We haven't breathed and engaged our parasympathetic nervous system. We haven't emoted. We haven't addressed what's showing up in the here and the now. But when we do those things, our bodies are become relieved, and our bodies are ready to rest, receive, and restore its wellness. So as I said, that's the AMBER approach underpins all of our programs. There's Connections, which is our suicide prevention program. And really our tagline for that is searching for a life worth living, because we care about life and living. We care about hope. We care about healing. And when we've been working with people who have been distressed and living with thoughts of suicide, that's the one thing that they seek, is that they feel like they don't have a life worth living. And what we're supporting carers and helpers to do is to find ways to support people connect with the life inside of them, connect with the hope inside of them, connect with the part of themselves that's keeping them, that's still keeping them alive. So searching for a life worth living is a very important tagline for our work, because it sets our mission. It's saying that it's not good enough for me just to prevent death. I want to prevent death by suicide, but I also want to support people living in emotional distress to connect with a sense of having a life worth living. I want their pain to be relieved. I want to support them as the transitional character that they are, because I know that they are dealing with a lot, and I know that should they be able to stay with us and deal with all of that pain, that they in fact will transform health and well-being for the generations that will come after them. So there are 3 different courses, but it's the Link Life course that's going to be available come December, and yeah, the rollout in January next year. So as I say, we work with Fresh Little Minds and Fresh Young Minds. Our programs, Fresh Little Minds, are currently, or well, they're not currently face-to-face, but this picture to me speaks 1,000 words. This is what we're really looking to achieve. So this is a program where we had Fresh Young Minds, so our young leaders, our teenage leaders from local schools, come actually deliver our programs with children from the local schools in their areas. So it was a post-primary and primary school partnership. Actually, it was multiple post-primaries partnership with multiple primary schools. It was a powerful program. So we taught our young leaders in the processes of running a Fresh Little Minds program, and then they facilitated along with our artists and mental health practitioners. They co-facilitated alongside of us, and they delivered the work with children. Our programs, we've got Grow, Inspire and Relax. We also offer our parenting program, which is now being delivered online as well. And we offer residencies. So residencies is our preferred way of working with schools. It's where we're not coming in and delivering a one-off program, but it's where we're based in a school for 1 day a week or multiple days a week, if that's what the school would prefer. When we're working in residencies, we're able to support the teacher through teacher training, and we're also able to support classrooms become accredited and approved AMBER classrooms, and children love that. So when we bring the AMBER approach to children, you can see there's a puppy here. It goes out to children through the puppy, and I have Amber right here beside me. So Amber's always with me. Say hello to everybody, Amber. Our mascot is important. It's a therapeutic teddy. We work multimodality, so we know that different children respond to different things. So we know that we work with music, color, scent, story, mindfulness. So we work with across all modalities, and we have, and what we found is that as a result of that approach, children and young people can engage with the program and the key learnings in the program in their own way. So some children will love the music, other children will love the story. Some children will love, the icons and the colors and the scents. Other children won't even notice them. Our programs are joyful and fun. They're creative, they're physical, and they're currently in they've been in Northern Ireland for the last number of years, and they're now throughout the UK as well. They're evidence-based. We've had impact reports carried out by various people as well. And really our evidence comes from the young people, but also from teachers who have or schools that have brought us in for one program and then never let us go again, because they're saying we are bottlenecked. We've got children waiting on waiting lists to get into CAMS, and we need them supported. And they bring in our programs, particularly through the residency. It's very powerful, where there's a person based in school, and all of a sudden they're noticing a de-escalation of that crisis in school. So yeah, we've lots of different results, and I can pass that on to you at any point in time that you're interested, but we're really seeing huge and significant results for children. So I'm not going to show you that because I've just talked about it, but our Fresh Little Minds, we also have a teacher-led. So when we're delivering Fresh Little Minds or Fresh Young Minds, we have both got face-to-face and then teacher-led versions. So as a result of the pandemic, we developed what we call socially distanced but emotionally connected online resources for skills. So with Fresh Little Minds, it's our Relax and Regulate program, but with Fresh Young Minds, it's our Pause for Thought program. So they're really beautiful, and if anybody would like for us to give or to give you a demo of them, we'd be more than happy to do that as well. So I'm just there's some of our Fresh Young Minds right there. Yeah, so this is a school where we train the leadership team in their school to run mental health assemblies and to deliver connections inside of their school. It was really powerfully positive. The young people at the beginning, they thought, oh, I'm only going to do it with the year 8s or the year 9s. And by the end of the process, they actually delivered a huge campaign to their entire school. We've been selected as a benchmark for mental health and creative methodologies by the Bearing Foundation. And we're really, really proud of that because, you know, we're not big, we're tiny, we're small, and we have decreased over the, you know, COVID has impacted us. We had to let a lot of our team go, and we're building that all back up again. So we're taking our wee wins where we get it to, and we're feeling very proud of the contribution that we are making to children and young people, even in these very difficult times, not just for the world out there, but we recognise that it's not been easy for ourselves. So we recognise our need to amber ourselves as individuals, but also as an organisation. Okay, so we have a number of videos which we have on our website, which you can go and look at any point in time. Yeah, this is just our Pause for Thought video. All very, very beautiful resources there that we have for children. I'm not going to spend time going through that today, but how can we work together? I mean, if it's something that you're interested in, we would love to hear from you. We have the capacity to work with school clusters, so to develop groups of schools who maybe want to come together or send certain teachers together, and we can come and deliver training to help you take our practice into your school, or we can come as a team and be resident in your school through the residencies. And as I say, a big part of our work is supporting teachers. So we are currently rolling out self-care training for teachers, and also training a number of skills in our approaches at the moment through our teacher-led resilience and our teacher training and our nurture resilience skill through the Amber Classroom. So there's lots of different opportunities for you to get involved with what it is that we're doing. So I'm just going to stop that screen share for now and come back. Is that me back? Yep. So yeah, I really think that if I could leave you with one message for today, it's that our being well, or like our not being well, is contagious, but our being well is contagious. So like if we could do one thing for ourselves, if we could start by looking after ourselves and looking after our well-being, it's a starting place for everything. It's where I started this talk, which was that, you know, I can't fix and sort the world out there until I fix and sort myself. And so whilst this work, you know, you've got your studies and you've got your metrics and you've got all of your evidence base and you've got all of that together, the starting point is right here. So we can support you where you're at, or if you can find someone else to support you where you're at, start with you. Start with you yourself. Ask yourself, how am I anchoring, moving, breathing, expressing and relaxing? Because if I can master that for myself, and I don't have to be fixed, I just have to be working on myself. I just have to be showing up as a transitional character. If I can show up as a transitional character in my life, what I am doing is I am supporting the children in my room to be transitional characters. I am role modeling that for them. I am telling them it's okay not to be perfect, but look, I'm working on this too, and this is what I'm doing too. So let's start with ourselves one by one, and you know, let's actually create impact and ripple the benefits of all of these approaches that you're learning about today through Mary's programs, through your own programs, through, as Mary says, all the other programs that are out there. There's a very common message, which is just, you know, it starts here, it starts at home. The walk home to wellness starts right here. So if we can support you, we would be happy to do that. But to find somebody who can support you will be the starting place. And when we're well, and we don't have to wait to be well, but when we're on that journey of wellness, we are modeling it and we are creating it in our classrooms and we are creating it in our homes. So thank you for your time today. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Your passion for what you're doing is certainly coming across in the way you've spoken today and what you have shown us. We have several questions that have come through, and we're getting some great feedback for what you're doing and what you have said. You know, given a lot of thought, food for thought to people. And it's certainly coming across as a starting point and a very powerful message that you're sharing. So one of the questions that we've been asked is, what do you call the model that you're using for this?
Okay, so our model is based on the AMBER approach, but then we've got different programs. So our suicide prevention program is the Connections Suicide Prevention Program, but I also deliver the other program, Safe Talk and Assist, but they're just not available online at the minute. So Connection Suicide Prevention Training is the one that we're taking out at the minute. Yeah, then there's our Fresh Little Minds. So when we're working with children, our programs are Grow, Inspire and Relax. So each one is a 6-week program. And our parenting program is called Parenting Fresh Little Minds. With teenagers then, it's Fresh Young Minds. Or when we work with an artist, Fresh Young Artists, the same process, same program, it's just delivered differently. And our 2 downloadable or like teacher-led programs and they're really good, and we put so much thought into them, and we've basically just we've spent the last number of months just taking everything that we have and putting it into this digital resource so that teachers can lead it in their classrooms, because we appreciate that, you know, we are in some schools physically at the moment, but we're not in many. This time last year we'd have been in 100 schools, now we're in 3 or 4, you know, physically. But we're in, through the digital programs, then teachers are able to either take the Relax and Regulate and deliver it directly with their children, or the Pause for Thought program for young people. So I hope that answers that question.
Oh, I think it does. You mentioned there about the digital involvement. Can you give a wee bit more information about that so they're aware of how they can possibly bring you into their schools? Yeah.
Well, as I say, I'm more than happy to take anybody through a wee demo as well. So do contact us if that's something you're interested in, because it looks well. It's easy to use. So how it works is that we well, we have a little package which enables you to access the resource for the length, whichever length of time you want, so a term, 2 terms, for a lifetime or whatever. And then you can contact us and then we would give you a login. And really it's called Relax and Regulate because it's helping you teach all of this stuff directly. So what we've done is that we rewrote up our whole Amber approach and our Relax program, and we involved actors in a production team, so having a drama background eventually paid off. We've created 30 micro lesson plans. So those micro lesson plans all would have like a little video, a wonderful, inspiring, fun video. So it's like almost like pantomime. There's a lot of fun in the video, so you'll get a lot of giggles in your classrooms. And of course it could be delivered over Seesaw or the apps or whatever as well, because it's online. And then there is a lesson plan for the teacher, so it's micro, so it's only 20 minutes, so it's very achievable. There's like a whole activity manual that goes along with it, and then like any downloadables that would be required, or that they could be used on tablets if that's the case. So like each micro lesson has its own little package, and so there's 30 of those little packages, and they can be run, for example, if I was working with P7s, as I am with some teachers, I'm encouraging them to run the micro lessons back to back, because P7s can easily engage with an hour and a half worth of micro lessons, but when you're with P1 it would be just maybe, you know, 1 micro lesson a day. So it might be that the circle time, that's how they start the day, or it might be that that's how they end the day, or maybe that's the thing they do after lunchtime, but that it's got an incremental build up over a day. So I hope that answers.
Thank you. There is a question here asking if you're actually going into the schools at the minute.
Yeah, well, we are working in some schools at the moment, but I guess we're working in schools to our capacity at the minute. We're hoping to we're working in schools to our capacity at the moment. So there's a lot of schools who have engaged with us. I think the beauty of the programs is that they can flip between face-to-face and then virtually. So for example, during the circuit breaker there, our facilitators were able to go, who were in the classrooms, were able to then just continue the program. So it didn't have to stop during the circuit breaker, because they were able to deliver it virtually with children, because it works virtually as well. It can be facilitated virtually. However, what I will say is that, you know, there is a loss. There's no getting away from, like, when you're not sitting in a room with a human being, there is a loss, there is a barrier. But we have used every ounce of creativity that we have to really help, like, you know, as we say, socially distant but emotionally connected. That was the most important thing to us, which was that we didn't want to lose that heart-to-heart connection, because we felt that that work would be purposelessness, you know, without it. You'd just be ticking a box rather than doing something that really meant something. So we are working in skills, we are working to capacity. What we really want is we want a team of people who would be interested in taking or train the trainer training in order to cascade that out, because the impact of coronavirus is that our delivery team has decreased, because we were almost 100% mothers, and mothers unfortunately just don't have the same availability now to work, because they're looking after their own children at home. And after having been and being a fresh Little Minds facilitator and a mother or father, a parent, you know the importance of, where possible, to be there to pick them up after school. It's an important thing if you can achieve it. So you know, we have a need now to rebuild up our team. So we're really interested in hearing from anybody who would be interested in being part of that.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of questions here asking about the residency program that you mentioned for both post-primary and primary schools, and they're wanting to know about the costings and how they find out more about that. Will you be sending links and contact details?
Yeah, I can send you links and contact details and all of that. Tracy in our office, so Tracy at freshmindseducation.com, Tracy Tracey at freshmindseducation.com. Tracy's looking after all of that, so she will speak to anybody who's interested in the residency. We are going to going forward, we're working within our own capacity to keep us safe and well and happy. We want to be a happy team. We want to be a well team. We are not looking for local or global domination. We want to work with a fewer number of schools through residencies rather than a larger number of schools and one-off programs, because that's what will keep us well, and that's what will increase the impact for a number of children. So if somebody is interested in speaking to us about residencies, that's exactly the conversation we're really looking to have with a school. We want to work with you. We want to support you. We want to support you with your assemblies. We want to support teachers. We want to support children. You know, we want to even, you know, support parents through the school. So our residencies mean that you can actually pick and mix from our suite of programs. So we can be running your assemblies. We can be having parenting programs and having your parents come in, and we can also be facilitating with children. So yeah, there's lots in a residency to explore.
Okay, thank you. There is a question here about the costings for going into the schools and that. Is there any?
Funding, so yeah, there are costs because there's no funding. So we have had no core funding and we've had no support over COVID. So we have struggled financially. So we have to unfortunately now ask for our service to be paid. But that said, there is funding coming down into schools, and I know we've had a lot of schools contact us through, I think, the Engage. I don't know how schools funding works. I am not a strategist at all or a business person at all. But I do know that we have a lot of schools contacting us about an Engage program right now. Shared education is another one. And we have written a lot of funding applications with schools and alongside schools. We are a social enterprise, so you know we are really happy to sit down and write funding applications alongside schools and work in partnership with schools. Our suicide prevention program, if you're interested in doing that training, that is fully funded, so there's no cost to that because the Public Health Agency fund us to offer that to you, so that there's no cost, and I will happily send the link out to everybody here so that you can sign up to the courses coming up in January.
Thank you. I have two more questions here. One is asking, is there more information for Key Stage 3?
Yeah, okay, so Key Stage 3, we're probably a bit behind on getting our information there. It's like I guess the impact of COVID again is that we have had to rewrite everything and recreate everything. So it's one step at a time. And we're trying to not stretch ourselves. So for example, our Pause for Thought program, for those schools that know us and trust us, they've just taken the program in with no information because we've worked with them for so long. But we hope that come January, we will have full information on our Pause for Thought program for those schools who would be new and want information on it. And if there's a school out there that's really keen for Key Stage 3, look, just send us a wee email and we'll talk directly with you. But as I say, once it's available, it'll go onto our website. We didn't even have a website at the beginning of this lockdown. So we've had to learn everything, as well as like show up in the world and support children, young people and their families. So it's been a journey.
There is the question here for, is there training for kids with autism or special needs available?
Oh yeah, the programs are perfect. Look, our programs are universal, and what we mean by that is that they are inclusive of everybody. And if you have a group, so for example, it might be that some specific children, so you might have specific needs within a class that can be met, but it also means that if you had a nurture group, for example, that we can come in and work specifically with that nurture group. We've been doing that for years really successfully. We've been in like Glenveigh Special School as well, and the program has been really well received there. You know, and so therefore, like in some schools, we're working mainly through color, scent and story, whereas in other programs we're working through play, song. You know, we respond to what children need. We have a breadth of modalities that we can tailor to the specific groups, but we don't do that in advance. We don't in advance decide what's this group going to respond to. We spend week one, and week one we get to know our groups, and we get to know their needs, and we get to see the classes that want to dance and sing, and we get to see the classes that want to be tucked up under the blanket and receive the messages through scent and story and guided meditation or whatever. So we will work with we're really good at working with children who are neurodiverse. It's one of the reasons we show up, because we actually believe that we're all neurodiverse and that we all need these approaches. We all need education to come out into the world in this way. So yes, the answer to that is yes, we do. We support children with additional needs.
Okay, thank you very much for a very informative session. I think everyone has enjoyed it, and there's certainly been a lot of feedback, positive feedback about the information that has been provided, and we will be sending out emails with all the contact details that Aine and Mary have mentioned here today. And at that, I will hand it back over to Elaine. Thank you very much indeed, Aine.
Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to read out another final comment that was put in case anybody missed it. This is from Joan McMenemy. She says, engage allocation for all schools. Also, emotional health funding allocated this week, minimum 3,200 for each school. This programme would meet criteria. So that we'll include that in our information we send out. Aine, that was just brilliant. So much information in that talk, and so much that you do in schools. We're just going to round up now, and I would just like to thank a lot of people. First of all, I need to thank the company I work for, Allstate, for funding and supporting this event. They give us a lot of support from marketing and just giving us the money that pays for it. I'd like to thank Susie, just for her passion and for starting this all off. And then I'd like to thank my lovely team for helping organise, for winding me up to the hilt, and just for keeping it all going and making sure we don't give up. I'd like to thank all of you for attending. It means a lot to us. And most of all, I'd like to thank Mary and Aine for their time and expertise. We really only organise this event, but they make it live. And there's two very different talks, but they're both really different approaches to the same thing. I do hope this morning has been worthwhile for every one of you, and you found things that you can take back to your school and hopefully implement. I want to dedicate it to two Matthews who did not, for some reason that we'll never know, survive this world. We need to educate ourselves in the best way of preventing suicide. We need to be proactive, and I believe by being here, every single one of you is proactive. Our hope is that between us all, we can make a difference in the lives of the next generation.